a lot of room for something different. So if it blows up somewhere else, then Canada might be like, oh yeah, like he or she is one of us, so now let's support it. But if it's the same, or if it's very homogenous with what's going on, then no problem. Like, let's just put it on radio. Let's just support this act. Let's put it on the festival. So I guess like it's a lot less of a risk taker of a country,
Okay.
um, for music. And then I guess because of that, consequentially, Canadians are not as used to hearing that, so they're maybe also a bit more hesitant to like support artists that they haven't heard of, or to discover more,
Hmm.
because they just listen and digest what they're hearing and then kind of go with the flow. So I think it's a combination of all of it. You have to blow up elsewhere if you're something different, and then they'll kind of adopt you as a hometown person.
But do you, I mean, for you, like with what the challenge that you faced in a sense, number one, like what
Yeah.
has kept you, because I mean, to me, as I said, anyone who hasn't heard this lady sing, she's often been compared to Adele. She's often been compared to, a bit of Amy Winehouse, but she has, to me, a very old sound, which you don't really hear anymore. And, your vocals are on a whole other level. So to me, with your talent and knowing full well in the sense, like to me, what I think you can be and where you should be, what has kept you in Canada? Why have you not taken your talents elsewhere?
So it's a bit of a complicated answer for, I guess, listeners at the moment, because like leaving Canada to do your music is not quite as feasible as people think. It's not just kind of like, let me get up and move to the States and hope it's gonna work. Like everything is about planning and kind of making a oh, that's my smoke alarm that keeps going off because I think the battery is dead.
It's
So
because your music is so hot, baby girl. Your music is so hot. You just gotta burn. You need to burn that shit out with water. Go on.
um so sorry about that. But anyhow, yeah, it's just that it's not so much of like a pick up and go situation. It needs to be carefully executed and carefully planned and thought through so that, traveling is not going to just deplete your funds. But I think furthermore, especially as a Canadian, like there are, immigration issues, and there are things to consider. It's not just move to another country and then, sure, I guess you could do it all under the table, but it's really risky and, in my opinion, not really worth doing, because I'd rather not kind of get into banned from the border, for kind of living there illegally, and trying to make money and to work on music. So for the moment, I've been more considering and focusing on making music from here, and just adjusting my targeting in the release and in the marketing afterwards, and obviously networking with people in other countries and just trying to like work remotely at the moment,
Hmm.
until there is a more, I guess, clear plan, or a more concrete vision for purpose of moving or traveling.
And I mean, and I get that, but I mean, as I tell many people, number one, like for example, who, like when I started my journey, and I tell people number one is that like you you don't necessarily, have to, you know, pack up all your shit and make that jump immediately. But what I tell people number one is that like they're not looking for you. So you gotta go to them. And that means, for example, it's like you've got to treat the industry, or even the sense the music industry, like when you're planting a seed in the garden. It's not going to grow unless you water it.
Yeah.
And to me, watering is where you have the ability to, where you can go to the States. You can, and I know you're saying, worried about getting, but people can go. People don't realize you can come to the States and stay for 6 months. Doesn't matter whether you are Canadian or not. Like you can come there, and as long as you leave before that 6 months is up, you have 6 months to stay there. So to me, that's 5 months of you executing a plan, making sure number one, you have the meeting set up before you go. Three, in the sense, number one, figuring out, okay, where I want to live and where I can afford, while you're down there.
Mm-hmm.
Four is basically is really putting your music, like for example, like people, as you know, who a lot of people, artists, they started off busking, whether it be in
Yeah.
subways or whatever. And there's so many in the States, there's so many buskers everywhere that you can just put out music anywhere on the street and you're going to make some change if you're good. And to me, it's like you can do that. And then as long as you, for example, as I said, like the first 5 months that you're down there, it's not about, okay, I'm going to go down there and get a record label off the deal, off the top. It's more about planting your foot, planting your seeds, and saying, okay, I've watered it. And then now when I come back 5 months later, now I got to see if it grows. And how that grows is where, okay, now you've planted the seeds, you figured out where you want to live, you figured out in the sense your budget of what you can afford. Then it's about, okay, how do I make the most amount of noise over the next 3-4 months for people to really start paying attention? And that's where it's the marketing for the first month. The second month is about the branding. The third month, in the sense, number one, I mean, like where you're shopping your shit everywhere and you're having people hear your music. And this is what, when I had this conversation with an artist 2 weeks ago who's in the UK, who used to be in Canada, went to the States, and now she's doing some big things over in the UK now. And what I tell artists, in a sense, especially when you are independent and you are trying to get noticed in the States, it's not like Canada where they're not really going to play your shit or pump your shit if it hasn't had a stamp of approval by somebody in the radio station. And usually for myself, of working back in the day at the Energy 108s and things like that, is where most of these, I guess you would say, radio directors, they really have no concept of what good music is. Like majority of it that people don't realize is that, like, when your music gets played, it's all corporate decisions. It's all corporate entities saying, okay, you know what, like I need to have this on my time slot at this time, this on my time slot at that time. And if there's happen to be maybe like 20 minutes that are left over on that network per se, like episode for the day, that's when they'll squeeze in Canada, those independent artists. Hey, check out this new track. And it's usually because some promoter or some DJ has been pestering that DJ saying, hey, do me a favor, play my artist. Where in the States, all it takes for you to really, in the sense, get your music played is to have a fire fucking beat that DJs want to play in the clubs, fire beats that they know when they put the music on the radio, it's automatically going to get that sizzle. Where you see in, for example, music in Canada, when it's played on, like, you know, those regular radio stations, the only time you get used to liking a song or even tolerating a song is because it's played to death. Because if you notice, all the rotations have like maybe 5-6 songs, and they pick like 3 songs that are played over and over and over and over again to the point where you're like, fuck, yeah. It's like it's in your head now. That's when I tell artists like yourself, it's like, look, when you get down there, hit up every radio station, hit up every club, and just get your music out. But you can't be putting stuff that is going to be like, okay, what you think is good. You've got to play that game of like, okay, what's going to get me for them to say, okay, I'm going to play my original music.
So I guess, like, if I can inject,
yep.
I think like the whole kind of like hustling radio and hustling people to play your music and DJs and all that stuff. I mean, at least in Canada, the climate's changed.
There's no clubs.
because I mean, a few years ago, I mean, I showed up to all the radio stations in Montreal, or at least all the ones that most played my style or like something that I would have fit on. And anyways, showed up there, and good luck trying to talk to anybody. Like, they took off all their email contacts from online, so I just presented myself, and then of course you're like kind of a nobody, and like they just asked security to escort me out. I mean, so if we want to talk about like hustling radio, well, the only way to do that at this point in time and still kind of like maintain dignity as an artist or to like some kind of industry respect is to hire a radio tracker, which is doable. Just, you know, like, let's face it, not everyone does their job. not
True.
everyone not everyone accepts songs. Like, some people just do it to grab a check and not because they really believe that they can place the song anywhere. So then, I mean, that's a whole other story, because that's about working with respectable people that
Hmm.
also have respect for their own companies and their own reputations in the business. But otherwise, I don't think it's quite there's quite so much room for the legwork of just showing up and being like, hey, let me annoy you, back like the Mariah Carey, you know, like, listen to this cassette or listen to this CD, and I'm not going anywhere until you do. I don't think we're really able to do that anymore.
I
Now
mean,
it's just kind of hustling online, I suppose,
but
stalking
this
your
is
social medias.
but this is the thing. You like at the end of the day is that now, and I mean, even for example, you know, there's three approaches to the situation. I don't recommend, for example, and I'll be correcting, so I'll correct sort of what I was saying, is that
Mm-hmm.
I don't recommend an artist like themselves personally walking into a studio and doing that. I recommend them either A, hiring a promoter,
Mm-hmm.
hiring a manager to basically present that blueprint. But understand, do not present that blueprint until you have, as I say, a bunch of friggin' cannons in your pocket. Like, not just something that, as I said, that you think's good. Something that you know, okay, like where whether it's been streamed to death, and even if it hasn't been streamed to death, the easiest way, and I say this truthfully and honestly, I tell people the easiest way when you are a new artist trying to break in and get that quick way for a radio station to listen to your shit, to get your shit noticed, to say, okay, a DJ is going to want to play this. And if you've got fire vocals, if you obviously know the artist, she's no longer an artist anymore, but I'm sure you've heard of the artist Keisha Shante
Mm-hmm.
from back in the day. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when Keisha started, she started around the same time as Sean Desmond. And Sean Desmond was my boy. And when they both, Sean had that song called Shook's the Answer, which was the beat of Shook Ones from Mobb Deep. And that was his first single. Everyone who's in the hip hop game knows the anthem of Shook Ones. It's one of the biggest. It's the one that's in 8 Mile. It's in almost every hip hop movie you've ever seen, because it's an anthem that once you hear it, automatically you're gonna get fucking hyped. And here's Sean Desmond, this white boy from Woodbridge, you know, who looked like a pop star. He dressed like a gangster, but he dressed like a black guy. And people were like, okay, well, is this guy fucking thinking he's Snow? What's this guy? And he had to figure out a way in order for the black culture and our target market that he was going for, in order for them to even give me a chance, because they're going to look at me, because you remember, presentation, before they even hear your music,
Yeah.
they only see you. So if you look, like, for example, when the first time I heard your vocals and then saw you, I'm like, this don't make no fucking sense. Because I'm like, this woman's sound and her voice is so extremely powerful. And you don't expect someone in that small little size frame who's got the cute little cheeks and stuff like that to be pumping out such incredible vocals.